The
You
jury
know,
decided. Go ahead.
well, what happens though? One of the things that we've seen is that when a person attempted to kill his two babies and his wife, uh, it sounds like that's a mental illness. In other words, I mean, there's could be a lot of reasons, but when you,
Could be anger, could be money, could be a lot of reasons.
yeah, but I can understand you being angry enough. Well, I don't understand it, but I've seen circumstances where people are angry enough to murder their spouses, but killing the kids, I mean, that's a whole different issue.
Have you seen some of these bad kids lately, man? No, I love kids. I won't play with that, but I understand the complexity of it. But a sudden snap, I've done it once. A sudden snap of the mind can cause you to do a very terrible thing at that moment. But that really doesn't define the person's total existence. That snap. And maybe she understand that he snapped. It all came to a head and she knows why and find it within herself to forgive him. Yeah, you can use the kids as how terrible this was. It's unforgivable, but she's there. She knows. And so I could understand her changing her feelings about his punishment, that they have reconciled and want to go on together. Whatever caused that break in him may never happen again. I mean, I've seen it with cases, murder cases I've had. The person has a lovely background, record, and everything, and just snap on a particular occasion. What caused it can be anything. So I'm not totally surprised by that. It does have a question, though.
Well, we're seeing more and more evidence of domestic violence in our country, and but it's something that we have to work hard as a society to try to fix because there's just too many cases. The second issue, Milton, there's so many legal challenges that we see today, but the one that's been dominating the news has been the Donald Trump trial. And between my own trial preparation, I've been watching this drama unfold on TV because the trial is not covered live by TV cameras.
Right.
But it was the thing that I noticed this week more than anything else, the prosecution played a very uh, informative recording of the lawyer and his client, Donald Trump. Our rules of ethics wouldn't permit us to record our client without their permission and consent. So he recorded Donald Trump basically admitting to a crime. And I was concerned about that. But on the other hand, um, in that sense, he had him to recite the money they pay for hush money and the purpose of them paying it. And so the issue in the case is that in a presidential race or a race, when you receive cash or money or payments, you have to report it. It's public reporting. So if you get large contributions, whenever you get them, you report it in an election towards the end. So every time you got $100,000, you have to report it like within a short period of time. And if you don't report the money you're taking in, it's an election crime. And so in this case, uh, Donald Trump apparently had some extramarital affairs and paid the women, allegedly paid, well, look like evidence of that, pretty sure, he paid the women off so he would not be publicly known. At the same time, uh, in the presidential campaign, Donald Trump Access Hollywood videotape or audio tape was released. And in that tape, he was bragging about how he could grab women even by their private parts and not be held accountable. And so he sunk in the poll. And so he was trying to make sure that there's no other damning evidence come out that would sink his presidential aspiration. And so that was the background. And they were saying that you were doing what is called a catch and kill scheme with David Pecker. Milton, what bothered me is that it's the National Enquiry who did the scheme, and they're sold in Walmart and Kmart. And I'm thinking, now we know that this is merely political propaganda. And I was disturbed that they still sell these magazines at Walmart and Kmart. Not
Right.
Kmart, I mean Kroger.
Right. They used to sell them in the grocery stores and drugstores, and that's what you see as you're at the counter paying your bill, waiting in line. You grab it, you look through it fast, and you go, "This is some bull." It'll have an elephant with a donkey head on it or something. The article, just strange stuff. But you initially started out with they played a tape between Trump and his attorney, right?
Yes.
Over Trump's objection, I would have supposed. I didn't watch it, right?
Well, yeah, they had some evidentiary issue, and the judge allowed because it was a recording of a party, but more importantly,
But Nate, may I inject? What I was
yeah.
coming is while you were talking, I thought, because I reviewed the transcript of the Mike Tyson case, where the lawyer went back to Connecticut to get approval to come back and tell the defense that Desiree and her father had lied in testifying in court because they had hired him to not only represent her in public appearances, but to get book rights, movie rights, and any contract that she could get to tell her story. And so the judge said, even though the bar in Connecticut allowed the attorney to do that, she was not going to admit that into evidence because of the sacredness of the attorney-client relationship and the expectance of privacy between clients and their attorney, if you recall. And she wouldn't let that lawyer testify because of the sacredness of the attorney-client communication. Here we seem to have a contradiction of that sacred right that we all grew up with through law school and practicing law. So it seemed as though that is being eroded through that ruling by the judge. You remember Mike Tyson case?
Yeah, I remember that. Speaking of Mike Tyson, that case was tried in Marion County criminal court, and that was really, I thought, one of the poorest trial strategies by the defense that I've ever seen. It was embarrassing as to how they defended that guy and
right.
the advice they gave him. I just thought that the lawyer did such a horrible job in a case whereby he's charged with rape, and there was really no physical evidence or facts that was critical to the case that's proved that it had anything to do than a consensual encounter.
Right. But my point is that, these laws that we hold sacred are oftentimes knocked down by various courts. And if you're saying that even Trump is entitled to confidentiality with his attorney, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that rule has been around for a century, and I think it's important to having the confidential relationship between attorney and client. The exception to the confidentiality rule is the idea of future crimes.
Right.
So our ethics rule says that if our clients say, "I murdered my wife last night," that's protected.
Right.
When you say, "I'm going to murder my wife on Sunday," that's not. It's because of future crime, and we have a duty, an obligation to try to prevent criminal misconduct. So the problem we run into is that there were so many different things that the Trump folks were involved with. It was just they paint him in the news as though he's running a criminal enterprise, Milton. Uh, you know, all of his property valuation were done elevated to get loans and devalued for tax purposes. I mean, it was shocking to me as to how they were doing. But on the other hand, he had lawyers and accountants that supported these items, misconduct or otherwise, that appeared.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was concerned about that. The third thing, Milton, that's been on the news this week, I was looking at some pictures of what happened when students sat in and protest and outsiders. They were at the universities and colleges for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And in Indianapolis, we've seen during the pandemic, the George Floyd murder test. Here in Indianapolis, we saw people breaking in buildings. And then we looked at the videotape, Milton, much to most people's surprise, it was some white guys came from outside the city and would break windows and stuff. And then some black folk would run inside. And so all the video I saw, in fact, my old office building that was located at 127 East Michigan Street, there was a video camera showing two white guys just broke into the building to vandalize it. And so when you looked at that, it became clear that these agitators were doing that to paint a picture that this violent misconduct was perpetrated by the Black Lives Matter movement, and it was not.
Mm, mm.
And, you know, I say that because in our political campaigns here in Indiana, Milton, shockingly, I've witnessed what is tantamount to the most racist political campaign that I've seen in my professional career. We had a candidate running for governor of Indiana who attacked his opponent by saying that he loved the left-leaning radicals that are cop killers, Black Lives Matter, cop killers. And it was just completely false. And so all of these candidates seem like they've taken on a tone of they're trying to say, we're against diversity and inclusion. You know, all this crazy stuff in the campaign looked like they became more and more racist. And I was concerned about that because at the same time, we've seen lower voter participation and we've seen this attack on minority rights. Not just women. I mean, we've seen the abortion bans, but the rights of a minority. What allowed me to go to law school was the fact that, Milton, that we had effort to promote diversity, affirmative action. We've seen that door close right before our eyes. I don't know what your experience was, but see, when I grew up in the South, it was segregated. And the pathway to go into professional school wasn't available. And we've seen a rollback in these rights. And this is another topic in terms of what should be our step. How should we address these rights? What are your thoughts?
Man, it's how do I say this? I guess in a democracy where we have freedom of speech, it should be also / freedom of speech and to lie, because that's the freedom that we tolerate here in a democracy. And we have to abide by it if we're going to have any kind of a free uh, free society, and that hopefully the people are intelligent enough to discern what is the truth and what is a lie. But many people are not educated or just dumbed down to the degree that they follow anything that comes along that make noise. So yeah, we got that problem, Nathaniel, uh, with the present situation. And the people on the right seem to want to say anything they want to say at any given time. And a lot of people want to believe it and they follow it because that's what they want to hear. They have somebody to blame for their condition or their situation. The human psyche is a strange thing to understand. I followed some advice of a specialist in my own life because I wanted to hear that. I wanted to believe that rather than double checking it to make sure it was right. It's just a human weakness in all of us, believe it or not, and from my experience in life. So I understand how people can get wrapped up in believing in a lie and following it because that's what they want to believe and want to hear. A lot of times. Other times they intentionally do it and they know what's going on. But take someone smarter than me to figure this out, how we're going to stop the line that's going on to lead our country, especially by the political right and Donald Trump. So yeah, I'm concerned about it because I got my education through the LEOP program, a Legal Education Opportunity Program, back in 1970. They made certain exceptions for minorities who applied for law school, and I was able to get accepted into UCLA, Hastings, and USC, and decided to go to Hastings. I don't think normally I would have passed the threshold or been accepted in those schools if it had not been for the LEOP program. 25 of us got in that first year. 12 of us finished and 4 of us passed California bar. That percentage has increased over the years, but I think it's a worthwhile program for this country to have in place for minorities who have been deprived for so many years, and we got to continue to fight for it. It's not going to, they're not going to go away just because we are upset with them. We just have to keep fighting for what is right. And those programs, I think, benefit society. So we just got to keep fighting for it because the right is afraid, I guess, that if things are equal and there's diversity and this richness of this country is shared by everybody, that it will somehow deprive them of what they think they are entitled to. They're entitled to. We're coming into their entitlement. So that's just how I see this position or predicament we're in.
Well, Milton, I experienced a similar issue when my law school class at the University of Georgia, and there was 232 students, and in my class there were 8 African Americans out of 232. At the time, Georgia's population was about 30% African American. So we were 8 or about 3% of the class. Well, one of my classmates didn't make it back his second year, and then another transferred to University of Virginia. But of the 7 folks who graduated from law school, we all passed the bar the first time and all had successful legal careers for the most part, right? But the one thing that was critical is that I was a beneficiary of affirmative action. Mm-hmm. Affirmative action was always present at the University of Georgia Law School, except that affirmative action meant that you were white and wealthy, you had preferential admission. Or if you were the largest donor, yet in white, you had a preferential admission. So the only time that it applied to African American was in the late 70s, you know, at least in my education career. And that's important for people to understand that affirmative action has always been around. and now is under attack. And they reverse the dialogue and say affirmative action can't be used to discriminate. But the fact is, we still have affirmative action. So if you are connected to the university, you're a large donor or otherwise, you get into these prestigious institutions. What has happened is African Americans are less than 2% of the advanced degrees at major colleges and universities, less than 2%. And with these new rulings, these new attacks, what are they trying to take it down to 0%?
Yeah, they try to take us back to the Reconstruction period or slavery. You know, they trying to take the benefits that we've gained over the years from Emancipation Proclamation, from freedom to man, we had Wall Streets, we had the Black Wall Streets in Oklahoma and other cities where Black people were thriving with their own professionals, their own neighborhoods, and those were burned down and taken away. We just are not entitled to benefit from the richness of this country like others. That's just the psychic that we're dealing with, Nathaniel, I think.
Well, you know, when we had the passages of these major civil rights legislation in the 60s, it was supported by a recognition of the African American that it was necessary to engage in the political process and to be activists, right? Mm-hmm. In the last couple of years, I mean, when George Floyd was murdered, we saw a change in America in front of our eyes where everybody recognized that we needed diversity and inclusion.
Right.
We saw corporations spend millions of dollars. We saw an evolution in our society. And just like in a flash, we've seen a sudden reversal.
Right.
We saw cases brought before the U.S. Supreme Court dealing with Harvard and the University of North Carolina where it's saying affirmative action can't be used now.
Right.
Never mind the fact that you have limited revolution. And then now University of Florida get millions of dollars in TV revenue because they have some marquee African American athletes. They have some of the best athletes on the planet, most of which are African American on their football and basketball team.
Right.
Their track team, some of the most elite athletes ever. They're competing for a national championship every year, but their money sport are dominated by African American. And what did they do? Milton, they got rid of their diversity and inclusion. They had, 13 to 15 people, they let them all go. Because in Florida, the idiot governor says that it's so-called woke legislation and they want to kill that. And what astounded me is that I did not see the African-American athlete enter the transfer portal. See, there's two types of students. You have student athletes, and you have regular students. Student athlete, now with NIL, they get paid money from legally today to compete in collegiate sports. The elite athletes are in high demand. All the major colleges are seeking these elite athletes. So you take the 40 to 50 best athlete at the University of Florida, they can enter the transfer portal and it will wreck their sports program. Mm-hmm. Their major source of taking over $100 million of revenue will be dissipated. And back in the 60s and 70s, I think that athletes, particularly, we were more aware of racial issues, seem like, than the kids today. You know, it just seemed that way to me. I could be completely wrong, but you know, when we were at law school, we did not have the university did not recognize Martin Luther King Day, so we went to rallies and we marched. We protested at the student union. We had speeches. No, we want a holiday, and so the university then adopted Martin Luther King holiday. It was symbolism but it was a recognition of the fact that we're people too.
Right.
And so now I don't see that type of activism. And it's almost like we have to beg these people to vote. And right before our eyes, we're seeing their rights being eliminated.
Yeah, I go back to you said at the beginning of this program that 3 people voted where you went to vote, your son, your daughter, and you. I think you were describing the low turnout at your voting station where you went to vote. Is that the point that you were making there? That there's just not a lot of people going out to vote? I don't know, Nathaniel. This is the evolution that we're engaged in today. My lady, my partner, teaches at an elementary school where this 3rd grade kid has a contract, has a profession, not a professional contract, but he's getting paid for his athleticism in football. He's in the 3rd grade. You follow me?
3rd grader.
3rd grader, man. And I don't know I don't know how much money, but he's a little local. But his attitude is real good, and he accepts the fact that he has been elevated to making money or having be paid to wear certain good Nike goods and stuff, man. In the 3rd grade, you follow me? So they know the money that's being made in athletics. You said not many blacks are going through the portal, but the society has changed. Yes, I don't see how 3rd graders is justified to be paid, but in a way, it is what it is. But I do believe college athletes are entitled to be paid with what they sacrifice to play sports and the money that these colleges are making off of these kids, and maybe some high schoolers should be compensated for the pain and suffering they get while playing these sports. Okay, I say all that to say we're living at a change of times, changing of the guard, and we just got to keep fighting for what we think is right. Going back to the time before when there was no affirmative action and no civil rights movement is scary to me. From what I've read from the collection of data and information from the past, from the Jim Crow laws and the lack of diversity and the lack of fair housing, we can't go back there. We can't go back there. So we got to keep fighting for what is the right thing to do for our society. And that's all I can say about it. It's wrong and we see it and we got to keep fighting it. Do you know anything else to do?
Well, what I was thinking, I don't know why the youth of today, with all these communication, I guess most of the kids today get their news from TikTok the Russian or the Chinese back communication versus the newspapers and things like that. I don't see young folks reading newspapers and things like that, Milton. It seemed like even my son and my daughter, who are highly educated with advanced degrees, they seem to watch their news on their cell phone. And I have some interesting conversation with them from time to time because they'll see something on the news cycle on their phones. I grew up reading 3, 4, 5 papers on a regular basis. When I was in high school, I used to go to the library at Pahoka High, and I would read the newspaper. I would take a break and go and read all available newspaper on a daily basis. I started doing that early on. And I don't see that. But the point I'm making is I don't see the activism by youth to protect their rights. And I'm concerned that the opportunities that were available to us later in our life won't be available to the next generation.
Well, I hear you, man, and it irritates the heck out of me for my daughter and my partner. Even at dinner, they on the phone, I want to just yell and take the phone and throw them out the door. But they grasp a lot of information briefness of reading the phone information in a 2 or 3 minute period, yes, that we just didn't have the benefit of. And they come away from that being able to engage in conversations about subjects that they've read or seen, which is much more, I won't say more detailed, but it offers many more subjects and information than they can get by reading the newspaper that you and I still read the hard copy of the newspaper. I got to have my paper every morning. Try to read it, can't read all of it. I play my Sudoku, try to read the front page and the A section and then get to the local section, but it's a different time, brother. You and I, it's a different time. And so I think we're going to have to accept it. We can't stop it.
Okay. We got a call. Imhotep, yeah, come in. I'm sorry.
Yes, how you doing?
You got a comment
can you all hear
today
me?
about our subject matter. Sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Loud and clear.
All right, good. Good morning. Good morning to all you all wonderful people. I just want to thank you all again for what you provide us, because we do not get this in any other medium. I don't watch too much of CNN or MSNBC. I do see the clips on TikTok or X or whatever you want to call it. But I just want to be thankful for you all, because we don't get this from too many Black lawyers. And as my mother being one, I just want to say you all are just wonderful. So other than that, I want to comment on Nate. I don't know if you discussed, I just got back from coaching soccer at TAS, so I picked you up a little late. I didn't know if you discussed the bills being passed in Louisiana, the one that took away the district, the majority Black district down there. Also, the bills that they did to try to strengthen enslavement. They don't want guys being out on probation for little misdemeanors. They want them locked up because sheriffs around Louisiana are saying that they need that labor. They got a lot of private prisons in Louisiana. They got a lot of labor. And then number two, Chicago just put out a list of, I think it was 9 police that was on the registration of the Oath Keepers. The white supremacist group, Southern Poverty Law Center, has been characterized as one of the worst terrorist groups in the country. And a Black chief, Milton, a Black mayor, Milton, refused to discipline them in any kind of way. In any kind of way. In any kind of way. It just astounds me. And we championed voting. Mayor Johnson was elected overwhelmingly by a lot of Black people. But that seems to be a slap in the face to the Black and Latino community, minority community, period, in Chicago, that you would not even have any type of disciplinary behavior to people, police, who are on the registrar from a white supremacist organization. That leads into why we have distrust with the police. And this is the stuff I've told Sergeant Kendall Adams here and Chief Randall Taylor when he was here, but when he was the chief. So I'd like your thoughts on that. The Louisiana situation is very, very grim to me. And then the Chicago situation, how you don't even discipline them at all? And
well, Imhotep, let me make something real clear before we leave the air. Something important you need to know.
Okay, go ahead.
There was a case that I tried called Jackson versus Sharp. And that's one of the numerous cases that I won for police misconduct. And in that case, we obtained evidence to show that the police officer was speaking at a white supremacist meeting. We obtained testimony outside the presence of the jury that he went to the graveyard of the deceased African American shot and killed to sing the N-word song. So wow. We had ample evidence to show that this officer was a hardcore racist. So what did IMPD do? They promoted him.
Oh my goodness.
So in other words, we proved he committed murder, and then 2 years later, he got promoted. And so before you start talking about Louisiana and Chicago, we have the same problem here because the police union have so much power in the sense that they can say, well, we're not going to work as hard. And so it's a very tough job when you have that much power in a group of people. So even if the officers are dead wrong, they still support them. Well, that's
But
a
that,
caveat. They
but that's
support.
contrary. But Nate, that's contrary to what we teach. I just told a bunch of young children, 10 to 12-year-olds, that it's the character that we're building out here. It's not just about sport. It ain't about winning and losing. It's character. So throw that all out the window because of one particular profession. It's just astounding. But go ahead, Milton. I'm sorry.
No, I'm listening to you two gentlemen talk about your own city there, because I said before, the law enforcement union is a very powerful organization, and our political leaders are scared of them. They don't want to be challenged by them. They don't want to take the chance of not being supported by them, and so people who want to remain in office have to decide: do I go with what's best for the public, or do I kind of buckle my knees by the pressure that's put on by these law enforcement unions? I mean, it's a reality, man. They give these campaigns here in California and LA, they give millions, not 100,000, they give millions of dollars to candidates. And they want you to do the step to their demand. So I think it's a complicated situation, but they're intact and they're enforced, and they dictate a lot of the politicians' positions. And so these black mayors you're talking about, and other black chiefs, they're afraid that they get snatched out of office maybe the next day if they don't abide by what the rule is.
Wow. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Imhotep, one other case I need to remind you of. We talk about what's going on in these other cities. In our city, we have a Democratic mayor. We have Democrat control of the city council. The mayor is actually a chief executive officer. He also runs the police department. I like the mayor. But we have the worst qualified immunity decision in the country. Indiana and Dade versus City of Indianapolis, we have a qualified immunity where police officers basically suffocated, asphyxiated an 18-year-old teenager at 10th and mid-offer. They killed him by handcuffs on too tight, and he suffocated, asphyxiated at the scene. They denied him the opportunity to have medical care by signing his name saying he refused medical care even if I died. The district court ruled in our favor, Seventh Circuit ruled against the Supreme Court, then it stopped. So in essence, in Indianapolis, a police officer under that decision could cause you to die by suffocation and not be held accountable. That's our law. And so when you talk about these other cities and stuff, we have the worst qualified immunity decision right now in the whole country. And so I want you to be aware of that. So why is that important? You got to get out and vote, because we gave too much power to police unions. So we can talk about what's going on in other city, but I care like charity should begin at home. We need to talk about what's happening here in our own city. I think it's a travesty what I've seen occur in terms of law enforcement. Last fall, Milton, in 3.5 months, we had 18 African Americans shot and killed by police officers. And the response of some black minister was to fire the black police chief. And so we get now a new chief, nothing's changed, and they're all happy. Right. Go figure.
Right. Yeah, these law enforcement unions, man, are powerful. They're powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this idea, we've seen a slow erosion of our rights in the courts, Milton. In California, you have civil rights statute that's pretty strong, and people could do labor and employment cases in state courts. I've been watching some of the decisions. Mm-hmm. In the federal courts, the racial discrimination type lawsuits are basically ending.
Right.
It's almost impossible to get past summary judgment. And we've seen this occur slowly But what has happened though is that we've been attacked for affirmative action. We're denied diversity and inclusion, and access to the courts is being reduced. At the same time, I don't see a sense of urgency in our community for people to get off their posterity to go out and vote.
Nate, yesterday I had a conversation with two state court judges who I come up through the ranks with. One of them worked in my office for 4 years as an associate. And I had called them to vet a person who wanted to go to the trial lawyers college. But I asked them, how did they feel about their positions now as judges? And we were on a three-way call. And they both were kind of pleased with things. And as a matter of fact, one of them said that he thought that for some reason, the court's decisions in the state court were becoming more favorable towards people's rights as opposed to supporting law enforcement on a couple of search and seizure motions that had come out in California through the Supreme Court, protecting rights of the accused to search and seizure, against search and seizure. A month ago, I had the benefit of sitting down and having lunch with a retired federal court Ninth Circuit judge, been retired for a year or so. And I said, why did you retire? We still need you on the bench, you know? I said, I couldn't take it anymore because the court decisions are leaning so far to the right, Milton. Whatever I wrote didn't matter anymore if it was in the interest of people. And I just don't want to deal with it anymore. So I retired and I'm out here. He's working with a firm now. So I just, when I talked to the two judges yesterday, I was thinking that they were going to be siding with his view of the court that is leaning so far to the right, it's almost hopeless. Their position was that they saw the court going towards protecting the people. You follow what I'm trying to say? And so it's a mixed bag, Nathaniel. In the federal system, this judge thinks we're heading downstream. We're heading down. State court judges feel things are, it's getting better. It's getting better. So what does all that mean? It means that it's confusing to me.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a caller. Pierre Pullen, you have a comment today.
Oh, thanks for taking my call, Nate. I just heard you mention that it was almost impossible for an employment case or to get past summary judgment. And one of the things that they never talk about, or you never hear, but lawyers know about it, is that, like, for example, in the Seventh Circuit, they have their case law with respect to age discrimination and race discrimination and all of that. And what these employers do and what these lawyers do is, since they know the case law, they get with the employer or whoever, and they just go back and they tailor the employer's actions to fit the case law. So that's one reason you can't get past summary judgment, because they know the case law and they go back and they direct their employment office, HR departments, how to act and what to do in all of these cases. So by the time you get to court, they've already fashioned the facts that their situation conforms to the case law. It's something else. I just wanted to get your opinions on that. I'll get off the air. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, unfortunately, Milton, he's accurate. That's exactly what they're doing. But we see that also in police cases.
Yeah.
I had a police officer come by my officer and shared a tape with me that whereby they were teaching in the academy how police officers basically get away with murder. You know, and
Yeah.
it's no different what the colleges talk about, but he was basically saying that we involved in this situation. What do you have to say of your police officer? I was in fear of my life. That's why I pulled the trigger 10 times.
And they've
You
been
know,
trained. They've been trained to say during a altercation or situation to repeat false fact. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. You know, and the guy, I'm not resisting. I'm not resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. And they just keep their mantra going to justify that's why I killed him.
yeah. And so our call is right on point on that, because now we've seen an increase in that. And, you know, I don't use the term left or right anymore. I'm again called a spade a spade. It's just racist views versus being fair. And, you know, we keep saying going to the right. It seems like we're radical elimination of rights of minorities. And also now we see that happen to women. But I'm more concerned at this point in my time because the rights of minorities, particularly African Americans, are being ignored. It's almost like nobody paid attention to the fact that there is constant attack to diversity and inclusion and things of that nature.
Zhang
And I'm concerned about that.
That past service as Secretary Treasurer and upcoming service as President beginning in 2026. So they're in that sense, they're all kind of cut from the same cloth.
Seem to have a disruption.
Yeah,
Okay.
somehow that was our radio station somehow had a bleed in. But in any event, that's what I'm concerned about, Milton. I see that more and more occurring, and it's almost like we're not talking about that. The dialogue is going away from the elimination of African American rights. It seems like we're focused on all these other things, and the thing that happens in our community is not going to improve because as our rights being taken away, we have less opportunity for economic advancement, which means that we'll have more crime in our community. If people not working, making money, they're going to make money maybe illegally. So what we have to do is that we have to band together and start recognizing this, I think, Milton, and then make sure that we get everybody to vote, because we got to make sure that we protect democracy, but we have to also make sure we protect our rights.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree with you.
Well, Milton, I've enjoyed talking today. Next Saturday, we'll engage in some more interesting dialogue. We have important elections.
Not next Saturday is Mother's Day, isn't it? Mother's Day Saturday?
When is Mother's Day?
Next Sunday?
Oh yeah, we'll still have the show, but we'll also be thinking all those wonderful mothers out there next week. Certainly, because that's why we're all here. I mean,
Yep.
So, I'd like to thank everybody for listening today and our callers. And once again, next week, make sure we'll be talking about other important legal issues of the day. So, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Attorney Grimes. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.